Hey, it's Andy Yanez, and you're listening to another episode of Pawd Slama Jama presented by Clip City Control Room. Joining me, as always, Da'Yon Dunlap, co-host, and obviously, of course, as you see here, we have special guests. It's Texas Tech week 2 of the college football season for both the University of Houston and Texas Tech, the next upcoming opponent for the Cougars. So we're lucky to be joined by at Tailgate Talks, as you see it on the description. So we'll be talking all things UH Texas Tech. Don't go anywhere.
After the penalty, look at the time he has, and look at the throw and catch. Dell, touchdown, Cougars.
Drexel, what a pass to Anders. A King follow.
He throws it down for the Houston lead.
Well, 6 steals in the first half. There's Blair with the steal, picked up by Cam Jones.
On the offensive glass, so tough. And that's third game, 2 possessions. Sasser tries and he hits. Toon has the receiver open. Touchdown, Herslow.
They call them Pawd Slama Jama.
So a bit of an interesting intro. Before this is going to be the most important question. What do you think about it?
I liked it. I was over here like, all right, let's go. That's cool.
That's the right answer. That's the right answer. I would have kicked you out if you said anything. No, I'm joking. But before we get into it, Da'Yon, as always, my co-host, how you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing well, man. Excited for this week, man. I love college football. It was a great week 1.
For sure. And obviously, of course, our guest from covering Texas Tech with Tailgate Talks. How are you guys doing? I'll toss it around the table.
Yeah, we're doing good. Started off the Joey McGuire era with convincing wins, so it's all good here on this side.
For sure. So obviously, of course, getting right into it when it comes to that 63-10 win over Murray State. What were your main takeaways? I think obviously, of course, the elephant in the room, the injury to Tyler Shough. I believe it was reported by the Lubbock Journal that he's going to be out 3 to 6 weeks, or at least that's the early timetable. I believe that they said it was a collarbone injury. What can you guys talk about that injury and just your overall takeaways from that game 1?
Yeah, I'll let Dustin touch on the Tyler Shough thing, and then maybe I'll touch on kind of the atmosphere and everything. So, Dustin, if you want to take over the Tyler Shough news.
Yeah, so Shough's out 3 to 6 weeks. They're still not sure. They couldn't tell by x-rays what it was. He took a run kind of middle to the side and kind of jumped on the back, kind of like the little Tony Romo type injury, and like landed on that shoulder collarbone. So they're not sure if it's UC joint or collarbone just yet. They said on Wednesday they'll find out more and how severe it might be. But for now, it's going to be the Donovan Smith show for the Red Raiders for the next month or so, and we're okay with that.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is this is the same injury Tyler Shough had last year that ended his season early. And so it's just an unfortunate thing for him. He worked really hard this offseason, earned that starting job over 2 very good competitive quarterbacks. And then first quarter of the season goes down with that kind of same looking injury. Now, hopefully it's not the collarbone, but like Dustin said, Donovan Smith took over and the offense didn't stop at all despite that. For me, we were at the game. We've been going to games for a while, and the energy just felt different. Joey McGuire is here. It's been a long wait. We hired him in November, and so this is a long time to wait for a coach to get his first game. Typically, you don't hire a coach till maybe after the season. So we've had a lot of time with Joey McGuire, and it was about time to see that first kickoff, and everything was great. It was nice to handle an opponent that we're much better than. That's something that we haven't done very well lately. Last year, we almost lost to SFA. The year before that, we struggled against Houston Baptist, whose offensive coordinator is now on our sideline. So it was just nice to handle business, beat a team that didn't really deserve to be on the same field as you. So that's kind of how we're feeling right now.
Let's stay with the quarterback and Donovan Smith. He has some experience. What you guys take away from him, and how confident are you guys in him just going forward with the uncertainty with Tyler Shough and his timetable to return?
Yeah, Da'Yon, we're real confident in him. You mentioned his experience. He got quite a few starts and played a lot last year, and you could tell last Saturday that definitely helped him. he started off very good, was 2 for 2 with 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And so we felt very confident of him coming in. I forgot to mention Shough went out at the end of the first quarter and Donovan played the second, third quarter. Maybe that was a game script, maybe not, but he played super good and barely missed any reads. He checked into some plays that got us into a better situation. I know a couple of the touchdown runs were his audibles and play calls, and saw something before, called into it. And that's going from that experience last year and this year. I think me and Brooks really liked seeing that our play calling with our offensive coordinator, Zach Kittley, didn't change when we had to make that move. It was the same script, same plays, nothing really different. Honestly, there was maybe even some additions of little quarterback option type plays that we don't typically do with Shough. So really there was a little more, little extra fold there. So it was really nice. He had a great game, 4 touchdowns and in 2 quarters of work. So that was really nice, really confident. And we're confident in him heading forward too.
Yeah, there's a very large portion of the fan base that was on the Donovan Smith as the starting quarterback train. So for them, it's now his time. And so we're all behind this guy. We saw what he could do last year in a few games. You know, he led us to the upset of Iowa State. And then, of course, that convincing bowl win over Mississippi State. So for him, you know, he came in and that offense continued to roll. We scored on every single possession that he was in as the quarterback. So that's what you like to see. And the ball just never stopped moving. It was just consistent, getting up and down the field. So you like to see that. And so, yeah, the offense is in good hands with Donovan Smith.
Kind of an open-ended question I want to ask you guys, and it could be what you guys just touched on with how good Donovan Smith looked in that game. But what was maybe another positive that you guys took away from week 1 and you guys really feel really confident about, whether it be a certain area on the offense, defense? What stood out?
Dustin, I'll start off. I thought it was the receivers. We have a good and very deep receiving core, but a lot of those guys haven't had the chance to step up and kind of take over as the starters. And so our 2 guys starting on the outside positions, Loic Fungi and Jerran Bradley, were 2 guys who I don't even think had over 200 yards receiving last year. Yet they came in and they both had 100-yard games and 2 touchdowns. They were consistent threats throughout the game. They were open. They made good catches. And so for me, we were expecting it to be Miles Price, the Miles Price show this year, and he only had 3 catches, but you had 14 different guys catch a pass. And so it just kind of shows the versatility of what we have at the wide receiver position this year. And they really stepped up in week 1.
Yeah, definitely receivers stepped up. I was impressed just in general with Zach Kittley, the offensive coordinator, and all 3 of our quarterbacks to handle the offense. And when I was rewatching the game, I wrote down a few things. That was the tempo that we ran at was super fast, but very like we were running plays with a purpose with that speed. You know, we've had offensive coordinators before where there was speed but no purpose behind it. There was definitely purpose behind the tempo. And there was a lot of vertical action. We were up the field a lot, and then we were very versatile. We had 14 guys with receptions in this game, and we also ran the ball effectively. So just the all-around offensive game, 600-plus yards total, was very nice to see.
From the offensive perspective, you know, Texas Tech, no matter who the coach is, offensive coordinator is, it's pretty much a spread attack, throw the ball around. It's kind of still the same principles, but I know you guys mentioned Donovan Smith brings another element with his running ability, but it's kind of still the same principles?
Yeah, I think Gidley coming from he was with Cliff and then what he got to do at Houston Baptist Western Kentucky, he's a very vertical, air raid style type dude. And he's admitted this too. Like he just wants to get the best players on the field and run the best plays we can. Like he doesn't care if it's running, passing. He wants to do it all, and I think he really showed that this last weekend.
And just in terms of my bad, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I don't really have anything to add on. Dustin kind of hit the nail on the head there. He's kind of from that Cliff tree, put his own things on it. But yeah, you're going to see a very spread out offense with him.
No, the other area I did want to touch on is obviously, of course, the running back situation, and I'm curious to see what you guys saw in that aspect, especially when it came to a player that Houston fans know very well because he had a really good game at NRG Stadium a season ago, and that's Taj Brooks. He had 3 touchdowns against Murray State. What was the rushing attack? What did that look like for Texas Tech in Week 1?
Yeah, we obviously love our two-headed monster that we have at the running back position this year, Taj Brooks and SaRodorick Thompson. Now, last year, SaRodorick was hurt when we played y'all, so y'all, got the full dose of Taj Brooks, and y'all seen what he's fully capable of. But they both just bring something different to the game, but they're such aggressive runners with the football. Their ability to get by defenders, like SaRodorick had 2 big plays where he just spun out of a tackle and then break away with that speed that they both have. So, coming into the year, we expected them to kind of have the same amount of carries and maybe the same amount of yards. And Week 1 was exactly that. Taj Brooks, 6 carries, 50 yards. SaRodorick Thompson, 7 carries, 48 yards. Only difference is Taj Brooks had the 3 touchdowns and SaRodorick had 1 receiving one. But these guys are going to be tough to deal with all season. As long as they can stay healthy, they're probably one of the best running back duos in not only the conference, but maybe the country, I would say.
Da'Yon, you got anything?
Strength, and we're going to lean on them a lot. And so see them catch balls and also be effective in the run game was really nice.
Did you guys get a chance to see any of Houston's UTSA game?
Watch the highlights. Yeah, because I think towards the end of the game was when we were at the stadium. So we were kind of keeping up with the score on the scoreboard and kind of seeing that y'all were, in overtime. And then it was like, oh, y'all are in double overtime. And then, oh, triple overtime.
Yeah, that was that's an absurd game that we'll touch on more in the second segment. I guess final thing that I'll ask here pertaining to Week 1 for Texas Tech. Is there an area of concern that you saw in Week 1? And obviously, of course, Week 1 it's hard to say that with how lopsided it was on Murray State, but maybe something that was a question throughout training camp, and it's just something to keep an eye on now that you're going into Week 2 against Houston.
Yeah, Dustin, you want to go first, or you want to hear what I got?
I'll let you take it for a second.
All right, then. For me, like you said, it's hard to kind of nitpick when you just dominate this team like this. And so the things that were coming into the season that were kind of weaknesses, whereas the offensive line and defensive line, and they both held their own in that game. So I think we're going to learn a lot more about them after we play Houston than we really learned from them this Week 1, because, Murray State really wasn't that difficult of an opponent. They only gave up 1 sack, and that was when we were on our 3rd team. And then our defensive line dominated their offensive line pretty well. So we'll learn more about them this upcoming week. But the only things I really can nitpick from that game, we had 9 penalties. I'd like to see that number come down. And then our secondary did give up a couple bombs. And so I know y'all have got some talented receivers over there. And so that's one thing. I'm not really sure if they were just defensive breakdowns or what, but would like to see less bombs against a team that was, not that great.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to go is our secondary, and our coaches kind of just nitpicked on them, I think, the play action got them. And also the Murray State quarterback, DJ Williams, he was good and has an arm. And by the second quarter, when they're down 3 scores, he was just like, screw it, I'm going to start bombing this thing. And so that played into it too. But I think I'm just so numb to us having pretty terrible defensive backs for so long that I was like, it wasn't that bad.
Agreed.
What about defensively? We touched upon the offense, and Tech is primarily known for having a high-power offense. Are you guys feeling kind of confident in the defensive coordinator, new philosophies that they're going to bring, especially when we're going against a Houston team who's going to be very experienced and can spread the ball around different receivers?
Yeah, I think our defense has a lot of players that are unknown. We brought back a lot of guys that have been here for a while, where they're 4th, 5th, or 6th-year seniors. That's funny to say, but we have a lot of those dudes, especially on the D-line and secondary, that have a lot of experience but have just gotten nicked up over the years, that they haven't put together full seasons. And so they're kind of flying under the radar, I think. And I really liked how our D-line played against Murray State. We rotated quite a few guys in, and I know we have a really good stud defensive end and a couple linebackers, but our D tackles stood out to me and played really well. So I was very impressed with that.
Yeah, I think what we're looking for this year in our DC is adaptability. And I think we saw that we can show a lot of different looks in this game one. And so that's what I'm just kind of curious about seeing moving forward once we start playing better opponents and teams that are actually going to attack us a little bit more, is this to kind of see how we adjust to whatever the offense is doing. But like Dustin said, like we've got a lot of experience back there. When you're listening to the starting lineups on our defense, it's super senior, super senior, super senior. And so having a lot of experience with a new defensive coordinator really helps. And so I'm liking what I'm seeing from them so far. I mean, holding Murray State to 10 points, it's still, college football. And so being able to do that, they completely shut them down in the second half. They didn't even get a first down in the second half. So a lot of positive things that you can take from that game and hopefully roll it over into, the next opponent, which is a much better opponent than Murray State.
Coming right up on Pawd Slama Jama, we'll dive more into the specifics of the Houston and Texas Tech matchup. I got to get over UTSA. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Pawd Slama Jama.
Continue on here on Pawd Slama Jama now, talking specifically about, I'm going to call it the rivalry between Houston and Texas Tech. I think we owe you guys, but I think how important is it for you guys from Texas Tech perspective to get off to a good start? I think that's going to be very important. Who can get off to a good start and who can control the line of scrimmage offensively and defensively? What you guys take on that?
Yeah, I think we got to get on y'all from the jump. And I think that's one of the things offensively that we really liked from game one is the first play we ran was a flea flicker that went for about 40-something yards.
From our own end zone.
And I think Zach Kitley's that aggressive offensive coordinator who wants to get points on the board early. And so I think that first possession is going to be key. Can we move the ball, get a touchdown, get things going offensively? I think that's huge. And, yeah, defensively to limit y'all at the start of the game. Like, I really want us to dominate that first quarter. I think that's huge for how the game's going to play out.
Yeah, and if you look at last year, Houston jumped on Texas Tech early. That first quarter was dominated. We're up 2 or 3 scores on us, and we had to struggle our way back through it. And luckily got 4 turnovers from you guys later to come back. And so from the Texas Tech standpoint, we don't want to have to claw our way back through that, right? Let's start a little better early on and make it a game from the beginning.
Yeah, I think, going back to something you guys said in the first segment, just in terms of what you guys saw in that week one matchup where being able to be up tempo, but up tempo with a purpose. And Da'Yon, I'm curious to get your thoughts on that, because when I heard that, that was something that UTSA was able to do well in second, third quarters against Houston. It gave the defense a lot of problems, especially towards the end of the third quarter where you were having players, starting to drop like flies. Obviously, it's week one. That always seems to be a problem early on in the season, but that could be concerns, especially in Texas Tech. It's not going to be in a dome up there in Lubbock.
Yeah, I think so, especially when you have a quarterback like Donovan Smith who brings another element like Franco Harris to be able to move the ball in with his feet and extend plays like that. So I think that's another element. But I think one thing that Houston is going to benefit from is playing in that tough environment on the road in week one and traveling on the road. So I would think it's going to be an even tougher crowd in week two against Texas Tech. But I think up front is going to be important. You guys talked about your offensive line. I think Houston, they really got after Tyler Shough last year and be able to put pressure on him. I mean, how confident are you guys in that O-line? Because I think Sac Avenue is going to be hungry to get after the quarterback.
I'm still a little nervous. They held up well against Murray State, but, they're nowhere near compared to what you guys are going to be bringing on that defensive front. So I'm nervous. There's still kind of like competition between some of the lineman spots. So like the top 5 aren't even really solidified yet. I thought they played good, but man, it does make me a little nervous that they're going to be able to break through and provide more pressure. And then Donovan Smith, can he handle it? I know last year he had several great plays where he was able to extend them by being on his feet, just being bigger than a lot of guys, because he is a pretty massive guy for a quarterback. 6'6". So I think they'll be able to hold up, but I am curious to see like which guys perform well, and if there are some guys who kind of show weakness, and if other guys are going to get an opportunity to play next week.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be probably the best matchup to watch for in this game is both sides of the ball, O-line, D-line, and how that's going to shake out. Because ours, like we're still trying to figure out who's who on that O-line, and there's a lot of positions we're rotating guys in and out just to figure out who can play, down the road. But I think this game's going to be way too high a level for that much substitution and rotation. It's not going to be a practice game anymore like you had in week 1. And so we're going to have to find some guys and get some consistency up front to hopefully hold you guys back and give Donovan some time.
And in terms of Texas Tech's defensive line, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? Because Houston's online, they kind of struggled a bit early. At least what Dana Holgorsen said today to media was that, for the first 3 quarters, from penalties, there were false starts, holding. There were a couple of times where UTSA was really able to give a lot of pressure to Clayton Tune. And I mean, that was a big reason why UH was able to not do nothing on offense for the first 3 quarters. But then Dana Holgorsen touched on they were able to clean it up in the 4th. And that showed that he felt that they have the personnel to be able to block. It's not like the players can't do it. It's just consistency. That's what he really preached. Do you think the defensive line, that's one area that could give UH problems, or what do you guys see from that position?
Yeah, I think we have guys who can be problems. There's a guy who's listed as an outside linebacker, but his name is Tyree Wilson, and he's a massive human being. If you haven't, go look him up. There's some incredible photos of him from Big 12 media days where he's just bigger and taller and faster than everybody else around
75.
him. And he's a guy who can completely wreck a game. And so, yeah, he presents some mismatches, I think, down there. But also our interior guys. We have very experienced interior guys. And Jalen Hutchings and Tony Bradford Jr. They had really good games last week. They're some of those guys that have that super senior tag that have been here for a long time, that know what it's like. They're familiar with Houston. They probably played y'all 2 times now. This would be their 3rd time. And so they're familiar with that. But also some of the backup guys came in and played pretty well. The guy who led us in sacks was a backup defensive tackle in Philip Bliddy, who had a really solid week 1 game. So I thought their week 1 performance was really well. And I think that they can cause some problems for you guys. I think our depth on that line is a little better than we thought heading into the season. And so I'm excited to see what they do against a better offensive front.
Is that something that worries y'all? Because I saw y'all gave up 4 sacks to UTSA.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's something to keep an eye on. And I think that's why the offense ran the ball so much in that game. They almost doubled their run versus pass, especially in that first half, to kind of open it up a little bit in that second half. But I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on. But I think the experience from that first game going against that crowd, because a lot of false start penalties, a lot of holding penalties, I think they'll be able to settle down a bit. I think they have the capabilities to block up front. But I think that noise is only going to intensify even more, because I expect you guys' crowd to be maybe 5 times better than it was in Alamo Dome.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely going to be a challenge. But as far as the running backs, I think both teams would probably try to run the ball and control the clock. I know you guys said you play a little bit more faster, just to go back to Andy's point. Will you guys, you think, try to run the ball more, or kind of spread it out and go throw the ball around a little bit?
Yeah, so Da'Yon, that's a good question, because if you look at the stat sheet, Murray State had the ball for 10 more minutes than us, but I don't think we care about time of possession as much as kind of maybe some older running type head coaches or fans would like. I think we're all about what's working and what's being effective. We did still run the ball pretty effectively with all our guys last week, and it was a few up the middles, try to pound out 3 to 4 yards and then see if you can bust one here and there. But that effectiveness of running the ball still helps with the versatility of the passing game. So I think it all plays together. The time of possession doesn't matter to us.
Yeah, I think it's the points. They wore a bunch of shirts all off season that had 50 burger on it. I think they want to get as many points as they can. So If the game calls for it, I think they might adapt and try to control the ball a little bit more. But I think you're going to see a team that's going to just be trying to put up points, use all that space that Zach Kelly offense creates, and try to hang another 50 burger if they can.
Oh, that's interesting because, talking about one of those old school coaches that cares about time of possession is Dana Holgorsen. And something he mentioned before the UTSA game, he said, I know we have so many weapons on receivers, but he still wants to be a run-first team. And against UTSA, Houston, they did control the time of possession, and they ended up rushing. They had 16 more rushing attempts than UTSA, and it's kind of interesting when you see that stat. And then the Cougars were trailing for 3/4 of that game. In the fourth quarter, it just completely went out the window. And I think a big part of it was just Clayton Tune making plays. And sometimes it required him having to scramble for a first down. He did a lot of diving. I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you guys have seen the play that Clayton Tune had to have a go-ahead 2-point conversion. You saw a lot of that often. And then going back to your point about the offensive line, there was a couple of times where Tune had to do that because that was the only play available. And obviously, of course, they didn't all result in those Superman dives into the end zone, but a lot of times it was that or bust. I mean, going back to, I can't remember if it was toward the end of the third quarter, early fourth, but Houston went for it on 4th and 2, like in their own territory, and UTSA got the stop. They were able to stop the running back Stacey Sneed here, and they got lucky because UTSA got called for an illegal substitution. They had too many men on the field, and that kind of gave Houston a lifeline for the drive that cut the deficit to just 7. And then from then, kind of Houston was able to take over. So I think absolutely that's got to be a big concern because that's what Holgorsen wants to do. He wants to control time of possession. He wants to get the running game going. And if Texas Tech is able to shut that down, it might be another instance where we saw against UTSA where the Roadrunners looked like they had all the momentum for 3/4 of that game.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you while you brought it up, what did you think about Clayton Tune leading the team in rushing?
Oh, I'll take it first, Dale, and I'll let you go. That's certainly not the recipe of success that Houston wants. And it's something that Dana Holgorsen himself touched on again Monday morning, where he's like, yeah, he had the heroics. And I think after the game, he said, I knew he was going to get hit. I was like, if he's going to do it, I might as well result in the 2-point conversion. But he kind of reiterated. He actually kind of used Tyler Shough as an example. It's like that play happened where he was scrambling, trying to make a play. And that's why he reiterated he doesn't want, he says they have design runs, but the way Houston sees it, they only want to use Clayton Tune's legs in critical situations, just because even going back to last season when Clayton Tune had to deal with a hamstring injury for a good portion of it, that they know that for the long-term success, it's probably not wise for him to have 15 carries and lead the team in rushing. But Dan, what do you think about that?
I think it could be deceiving. I think primarily because of the defense that UTSA played. They really played a deep coverage and wanted to force him to check it down. And oftentimes he could just extend out and run the football. A couple of design runs, but because they had the numbers in the box. But I think Houston's going to use maybe like 3 running backs they did in the first week. And so I don't think with outs and out for that basically the entire year, we'll have a week-by-week basis where running back will just dominate a game. Maybe so, but I think it could be a bit deceiving. I think Clayton just made the plays that was there, and so much it wasn't – he had 15 carries, but maybe 5 of those was design runs and clutch situations when the numbers to where he just had to make a play. So, I mean, it's good because he's a dual threat. I think one area that I've seen from Clayton this year in his first game was his accuracy. I think he never put the ball in harm's way. Every pass that he threw was pretty much on target, whether receivers dropped or was incomplete, but everywhere he put it, it was where the receiver could make a play.
Yeah, and just to add another point, I think there's certainly going to be, once again, another emphasis of being able to establish the run game. There's going to be the return of Tajon Henry up in Lubbock for you guys. He's a player that didn't play that much against UTSA. He got banged up, and Dana Holgorsen said he could have gone back in the game, but they opted not to, try to extend them early on, so barely week 1 in the season. Dana Holgorsen said he expects them to be ready to go for Saturday. So, like Da'Yon said, it is going to be Dana Holgorsen likes what he's seen from Brandon Campbell. He likes what he saw from Stacey Sneed. So it's going to be a 3-headed attack when it comes to the running backs. And Clayton Tooney's shown that he can do it, and that's going to be something that Texas Tech has to watch for.
I was going to ask real quick, is there any chance you see Dana Holgorsen getting the ball first, scoring a touchdown, and kicking an onside kick again like he did last year?
Man, apparently so it's kind of segueing, but it kind of relates to your question. So today he was asked because they won the overtime coin toss and they opted to go first in overtime, and obviously, of course, a big deal was made out of, oh well, wouldn't it be better to let UTSA go first and know what you have to match? And he went on a long tangent about how they've, once the new overtime rules kicked in, they did a deep study that, kind of went through all the overtime scenarios, all the 2-point conversion scenarios. I'm sure they discussed when to go for onside kicks. So you never know. If they think it's worth it, you're going to do it again. And the way he said it, they're willing to do anything that's unconventional if the analytics say so. And they don't necessarily care about what other people say. So you don't know. You don't know with Dana Holgorsen.
Yeah. Remember last year, y'all had the ball like the whole first quarter. I don't think we got the ball until the second. So.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you got anything else?
Nah, you never know. I'm just thinking about the crowd, man. How electric was the crowd week 1, and how even more electric will the crowd be here coming this Saturday? Well, how big of an impact do you think the crowd will have?
I think you're going to see a pretty impressive crowd. It was already really good for Murray State, and that was a pretty weak opponent. But everybody was just excited to kick off the Joey McGuire era. So it was a lot of people kind of left at halftime once the game was in hand. But I expect a full crowd, a very excited crowd, to actually have worthy opponent at the Jones. And now we've kind of seen what we're capable of. We saw that offense click. We saw the defense have a good game. So I think everybody is invested in Joey McGuire. And I think it'll be a pretty loud and pretty difficult place to play moving forward. So I think y'all are definitely going to be the unfortunate, first team that has to come in here with Joey McGuire and this fan base just kind of being ready for a worthy opponent.
And I think just to add fuel to the fire is, Houston coming into the Big 12 in a few years and being an in-state kind of rival that we've played recently. We have transfers go in there, and all that adds to it. And so I think it's going to be an electric atmosphere in Lubbock on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, and Dana was a coach here and coached here when he was at West Virginia, so he's familiar with coaching here. So there's just a lot of different aspects to it that I think really make this fan base excited about Saturday.
I loved his answer to if he's ever been hit with a tortilla before. And he was just honest. And he's like, yeah, definitely have. And there were a lot of tortillas out on last week, so expect those again at opening kickoff. And for you Houston fans that don't know, for some reason in Lubbock, we throw tortillas at the opening kickoff and let them fly, and there were probably a few hundred of them that went flying last week, so expect that again.
Yeah.
And coming right up on Pawd Slama Jama, don't go anywhere. We'll get more into predictions of what will happen between Houston and Texas Tech. Once again, you're listening to Pawd Slama Jama.
I'm going to take a little restroom break right quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Andy, it's funny. I was looking up some YouTube to find like post game stuff, and y'all had a camera, I guess, at the post game, and y'all's first video. So I watched that. I saw the logo, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I know these guys."
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome, man. No, I've seen that, and I'm guessing that a lot of the it's done really well. Like it's about to get 300 views in 6 hours, and I'm guessing that a lot of that is Texas Tech fans looking for Dana Holgorsen coverage, because that did not happen last week against UTSA.
Yeah, I saw it, watched it. He's definitely an entertaining guy, so it's always fun to watch his pressers.
Yeah, for sure.
He got real jazzed up about that analytics stuff, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, because there was a lot of talk about it. A lot of fans were like, "Well, what is he doing? Why are we going first?"
It's funny because once I seen that in one of my group chats, I was like, why did he go defense first? But it all worked out.
I agree with him, though. It works both ways.
No, yeah, it goes both ways, yeah. I didn't know about the tortilla, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. There's all kinds of myths about how it got started. We don't even know. So Yeah, there's people that just sneak packs of tortillas into the stadium, and then at kickoff they just start going flying.
I don't think you have to sneak them in anymore. The Texas Tech social media account was telling people to bring tortillas, so you can't tell people to do something and then try to confiscate it.
All right. Are y'all ready?
Yeah, man.
All right, bet. Down whenever you're ready, can bring us in.
Predictions?
Yeah, we can do predictions there and then just like casual conversation on the matchup, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right, we'll start with you, Dustin. But 3, 2, 1. Last episode, no, 3, 2, 1. Last segment here with our rivals, I should say, the Tailgate Talks of Texas Tech. And now it's prediction time. I think I know where you guys are going to go, but Dustin, let's start with you. What's your prediction for Saturday?
Yeah, you're definitely not going to like my prediction after seeing both of our squads in week 1. I have definitely stretched out our prediction of how close this game might be. I'm thinking it's going to be more of a 10 to 14 point kind of game. And we talked earlier, and I have a set score of 49 to 35 for Texas Tech. We're going to line up that scoreboard.
Yeah, y'all aren't going to like mine either, but I had similar. I think it's a 2-score game. I think the crowd is going to be, huge on our side. I think if we can jump out on you guys really early, that's going to help. But also, I think just if it's one of those, close games, I think the depth that we have, the crowd, and all that's going to play into effect. And so if it is close, I think it's something that we can kind of pull away at the end, or it's one of those where we jump on you from the beginning and kind of have y'all the rest of the way. So I have 42-28 as my prediction.
What about prediction as far as stats? Quarterback, interceptions, turnovers, anything?
Well, hopefully we get some turnovers. We preached that all offseason and got 0 last week, so we're hoping to get one. We know Toon likes to give it to us like he did last year, so hopefully we can take it away again and get 2 or 3 turnovers. But, I mean, I don't expect the 600-yard type of offense from us, but I would still expect 450 or 500 yards of total offense and good 300-plus from Donovan, 100 on the ground just as a team, 140 I think is what we had last week, somewhere in there. So very effective pass-heavy type of game. And I think Brooks hit it on the head with our pod. Like Tyree Wilson, our massive defensive end, I think is going to have a little breakout and have a huge impact on this game.
Yeah, that's kind of where I started on our podcast is I think Tyree, he was kind of quiet in game 1, but I think this is going to be a game that he can dominate. And then I expect another 300. I expect about a 300-yard performance from Donovan and a little like over 150 yards between Sir Roderick and Taj Brooks on the ground. I think that they're going to be really effective this game. I really like the way that Zach Killey is using them both, not only just running, but in the pass game as well. So I expect big performances from them. And then, I just really hope that Donovan's able to kind of continue the early success he had this year. Now he has probably, full 4 quarters to see what he can do there. I mean, 220 yards and 4 touchdowns in about a quarter and a half of play in week 1's pretty impressive. So hopefully he can keep that going. And I think if the offense is clicking, I think it's going to be very difficult for you guys to hang in there with us.
Mm-hmm. Kind of a question I have for both of y'all. So I'll just toss it out there, whoever wants to get it first. But what do you guys foresee? How do you think Texas Tech is going to handle Nathaniel Tank Dell for Houston? And I mean, he had a bit of a, you can call it an off game. He still had 2 touchdowns. I think he had just over 50 yards. What's kind of the game plan for him?
Man, I don't know. He's the one player on y'all's roster that really does make me nervous because, they had a receiver who kind of took the top off us a couple times, but and he's a guy who can do that. But, I definitely think we have plenty of experienced guys to contain him. I think it's going to be a team effort. I don't think you're going to see just one guy covering him. I think it's going to be a lot of maybe some zone looks to try to make sure that he's in front of us at all times and not let him get burned by get beat. And so I'm kind of curious about that. I really don't know what the answer is for him. I'm hoping he's not having one of those games where it's over 100 yards and several trips to the end zone, though.
Yeah, he's a hell of a tough matchup, man. And from our end, Texas Tech's end, like, we don't have necessarily a shutdown corner that we can say, hey, he's on him all game and we're going to let him figure it out. And not saying we have bad guys, but it's just more we have experienced guys on both ends. And so we can let your guy travel and we can stay where we're at and just pick him up where he is and deal with him that way. And so we just got to work on the play action stuff and not get beat over the top like we did in Murray State a few times, whether that be individual matchup or coverage assignments, whatever it may be. I think that was kind of a small concern that could show its head again.
My question, I guess I got for y'all is, what do y'all think y'all are going to do this week to get him more looks? Because I was kind of shocked when I saw only he had 5 receptions for 50 yards. So what do you think Dana and this crew is going to do to try to get him more than 5 and have him really have more of an effect on this game?
Yeah, I think they're going to move him around a bit. I think he's going to be primarily in the slot like he was last week. But I think they maybe kind of held it back a little bit just not to show as much. I think more quick passes, more bubble screens, quick screens to get the ball in his hands, let him move, especially if you guys play some zone coverage. He's exceptional in the middle of the field, reading his zone, setting down, getting his hands on it, and making plays. But I think overall, I think Clayton is going to continue to spread the ball around. I think Matthew Golden is going to have a big game. Keyshawn Carter had a couple catches, and he's returning back to Lubbock as well. And so I think he's going to be hungry. But I guess I think he's going to have a breakout game. I think he's going to be hungry, and I think they're going to feed him early and often. I think I'm going to go out and say he's going to have 8+ catches, $150, maybe at least 2 touchdowns.
Dang.
That's what I don't want. That's what I don't want.
Yeah, and the thing about Dell is that, like Da'Yon said, I agree. I think they'll probably make it'll be much more of an emphasis to get him the ball in any way that they can, whether it be with screens or have him do a lot more motion. But I think the thing that you really got to worry about is that he's doing punt returns too. And if you ask Dana Holgorsen, he should have had a punt return touchdown against UTSA on that illegal block in the back. They called that 73-yard punt return back, and he said that that's the worst call that he's ever seen. So I think Houston will certainly you'll see a lot more of Tank Dell in this game, especially with much more targets. But I think Da'Yon's point is really, really valid, especially when you think of Manjack, who had that crazy catch to tie the game, the touchdown. But Matt Golden is one of the players, one of the redshirt freshmen that they've been really high on throughout camp, and he had a couple of drops in that game along with Sam Brown, but he kind of made up for it because it was kind of like what you'd expect from players that haven't played that much, because even though he had a couple of key drops, he had a crazy toe tap catch towards the sideline. So I think Houston's at a point where something that they've touted throughout. They have so many weapons. It's gonna be interesting to see how Texas Tech matches up, because if there is extra coverage on Tank, I think it's gonna be a big day for some of the other receivers.
What about Tajon Henry? You guys seen probably some of the best of him. How good is he in y'all eyes, and do y'all expect him to come in and really be hungry to try to have a big game?
Yeah, I mean, of course, when you return to a place that, you got started, he spent 2 years here. I think one of his breakout games was against you guys in Lubbock several years ago. He had like 4 touchdowns in that game. So, he'll be chomping at the bit to get out there. But, we know how good he can be. He was definitely one of those guys that once he was in space, he was really dangerous. But, for whatever reason, he just was never really able to stay consistent. And so, I know he'll be excited, but hopefully we're able to contain him. And hey, if Dell has 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, maybe he's the only guy moving the ball for you guys, and I'll be okay if he has those numbers. And if Tajon has hardly any yards, and same with Keyshawn. I liked them when they were here, but I don't really root for them to have success for you guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, with both those guys, I was high on both of them. Disappointed they both left. Going to Houston, and Tajon was very highly touted coming out of high school and coming here and showed some flashes off and on. And so losing him, I thought was a big loss, and you guys got a big gain out of that. I'm glad we still have some guys to carry the load for us and didn't deplete us that bad. But, I was definitely disappointed about y'all's gaining of Tajon Henry.
Also, great name. Just a great name, Tajon.
Yeah, no, it is, man. Another great name who I think is going to have the game-winning kick is Bubba. I think my prediction score, I'm going to go 41-38. I think it's going to be another close game. I think Clayton is going to lead that game-winning drive, get it in field goal range to make that kick at the end. But I expect Donovan Smith to have a big game. I think just like Franco Harris, he's going to be able to move the ball with his feet and through the air. Especially if some of y'all receivers can make some plays, because UTSA receiver made some plays down the field. But coming that second half, I think our cornerbacks made a couple more plays, and our defensive line really, really took over. So I think when it comes down to it, our D-line is going to make you guys one-dimensional and make you guys try to spread the ball around more, throw it, in which they're going to be able to get after the quarterback and not allow Donovan Smith to really just to sit back there and force him to kind of be erratic at times and kind of use his legs more than probably he would like to instead of using his receivers.
Yeah, no, I do. One other thing to kind of add on to Da'Yon's point, the defensive line for Houston, they had a couple of times when, like Da'Yon mentioned, they were able to get into the backfield. They were chasing Frank Harris around. That they literally just could not bring him down, especially for the first three quarters, where it literally looked like they were just a second behind, where literally if they would have just got there sooner, they would have been able to tackle him. There were a couple of times when they flat out missed sacks on them. They could have easily, I think they finished with 3 sacks on the game. That could have easily ballooned up to 6-7 had they been able to bring them down. I think the Houston's defense is going to be motivated against Texas Tech to obviously that's kind of the calling card for Houston under Doug Belk, and they weren't satisfied with what they were able to put on film against UTSA. So you're going to have an extra motivated defense, and it's something that a couple of the players said right after the game, that they felt that it wasn't necessarily UTSA making the plays, much more that it was them not making those plays. So it'll be interesting to see what that kind of dynamic is like on Saturday.
Yeah, and just to kind of add on to what Da'Yon was saying, the one time that we've really seen Donovan struggle in a game was against Oklahoma State last year, and they had that incredible defensive line that was just in the backfield every single play. And you could definitely tell he was uncomfortable. And so, since then, our offensive line has really given him a lot of time and protection. So it'll be curious to see how he's matured from last year to this year, if there is pressure, if he's able to, remain composed, make reads, get the ball out of his hands quick and into our receivers' hands and let them make the plays and not try to do it all on his own.
Da'Yon, anything else you want to add before we wrap things up? What was I about to say? About your head coach, man. Talk more about your head coach. I mean, it's very exciting. He's recruiting really, really well. So how excited are you guys to finally get game one behind his belt and now get a ranked opponent inside? And it's kind of a chance for him to kind of make an early statement that, he got a chance to kind of turn things around.
Dustin, I'll let you go first.
All right. Yeah, Joey McGuire, our new head coach, very, very excited guy. He's been here since November. We hired him pretty early on in the process. He said, last Saturday was pretty surreal, and it kind of all became like, all right, this is real. And we were doing the Raider walk and the walkthroughs during practice or pregame. And so I'm glad he got the first one in and out of the way. Now's when the real test starts, because our schedule this year is brutal, especially this first half. Going game 2 with you guys is not an easy contest for either of us. And so now's when it really – how much all the work he did, even during the end of last season and off season pays off. And I like that he's kind of a different head coach than what we've had since I've been a fan for the last about 16 years. That goes all the way back to the Leach days. He's more of a defensive coach, but in this scenario, he is kind of hands off. He's letting our DC call his stuff. He's letting Kitley call the offense. And he's just going to game manage, make sure we got the right players on the field, timeouts, game manage, substitutions, all that kind of stuff. And so it's kind of different for us as Tech fans. We're used to Mike Leach and Cliff Kingsbury, and our head coach is basically the OC on the sidelines with the quarterbacks the whole time rather than paying attention to the game all the time. And so it's kind of nice to have, and I'm excited for that because he's a very smart head coach in a lot of aspects of the game. And so it'd be interesting to see how we handle a ranked opponent coming in here next week.
Yeah, like Joey McGuire likes to say, let's go. Like you'll see him say that all the time if you get on our social medias. We're all in. I'm all in on Joey McGuire. It just feels different, and it's kind of tough to describe that feeling when you if you haven't been a Tech fan. Like only Tech fans can kind of relate to that, I think. But it just felt different in the stadium. His energy is kind of unmatched. Like we just really haven't had somebody like this who just gets behind the fan base, like that whole cactus thing. I don't know if y'all paid attention to Twitter, but that whole cactus thing with TCU, I think Matt Wells would have probably not done anything about it, but Joey McGuire instead gets behind the fans, tweets out the cactus emoji. Like he just wants to be a part of this. He fits in with our culture here. And he's got the excitement back in the program. It just feels like we actually have like good things coming our way for the first time in a while. And so it's just nice to have a coach with that energy, a coach who knows high school football in Texas and is able to get out there and recruit it. Just a lot of things that we've been missing here from that head coaching position. It seems like he kind of checks all those boxes. And so, that first game is behind you. And like Dustin said, the stretch doesn't get any easier. It's Houston, NC State, Texas. That's, there's a very high possibility that you can lose all those 3 games. But right now we're all on the Joey McGuire train. We all believe in him, and I think we've got good things coming. I do think Tech fans need to be patient. We got to give him time to get his players in, work with his staff, and kind of get his foothold on this program. But we're still excited for it. We still believe in him, and we expect good things for this season.
Last one for me. Would you guys rather play basically a scrimmage first game or have a tougher opponent? Or like Houston, they had a very tough opponent in week 1. Now they got, I think it's going to maybe help them coming into week 2. Or would you guys like to have it how you guys had it?
I think for this year, I like it being this way with having a new coach, a new staff, so many new parts. Like it's nice to just kind of get out there, get game 1 in the books and not have to stress about it too much. Okay. I do like having that, big opponent though. It was fun last year when we knew we were starting off the season with you guys. And so I do like having that kind of big first game, but I would prefer that to be in Joey McGuire's second or third year, maybe not his first.
Okay. I'm more of a fan of the cupcake game. To warm things up, make you feel all good, kind of iron out some things, definitely with a new coaching staff walking through game day is, it's a whole ordeal, starting very early. And so getting that out of the way with a nice cupcake game is good, but I'm always a fan of the cupcake first, get some things done, and then get into a big game next. Because starting off with the big game, you don't know a lot about your team just yet because you haven't played somebody else. And so making those adjustments on the fly just gets even harder when you're trying to make personnel decisions like that. And then just as a fan, it's way more nerve-wracking when you don't know how your team is and then have a game like we did with y'all last year and it's like, oh my gosh, this is just going horrible. Like it just surmounts so much. And so I'd rather have the cupcake and then go up from there.
Yeah, what do y'all think now after, last year where y'all started off the season with a loss to us and then this year starting off with a triple overtime thriller?
That's the thing. The cupcakes don't always go easy.
Yeah, they don't.
Ask us. Like we had FFA, Sam Houston State, and Houston Baptist give us hard times.
Yeah, I think Houston for the last 4 under Hogerson, they've all had tough starts going back to 2019. They opened up in Oklahoma when they were ranked top 4. And then in 2020, they opened against Tulane and they were down 24-0, and they had to rally back and win that game. And obviously, of course, last season with Texas Tech at NRG. So I don't know, maybe the Houston administration likes to kick it off, running. But I'd probably have to agree with Dustin. It probably especially from a Rider standpoint, it's much better to have the cupcake game where everything's in the bag, unlike the triple overtime game where you're like, oh God, what's happening? I have to rewrite constantly. So, but I think from the fun perspective, you'd probably take the triple overtime game against UTSA just in terms of that excitement level because you're on edge literally every play. And then when something does something big does happen, like Clayton Tune did, that's why everyone loves sports, because of that buzz that it gives you, especially if you're live at the stadium.
Yeah, I think I would like probably a little bit of harder of a game first, because that first game, if it's a cupcake, you only can find out so much. And then to come that second game, it's kind of like the first game all over again, because now you got a tougher opponent. Now you thinking even more, although you find a little bit more about yourself. And so I think it go either way, though. So, I mean, like you said, the cupcake game cannot be so soft. And so it can go either way. But I would much rather have a tougher opponent and that can challenge you a bit more. That way, you're even more confident if you get through that game, going into that second and third, fourth, fifth game, and finding out a little bit more about the team and about the chemistry and what you have.
Hey, I want to change the question a little bit, because you guys are doing something we don't see a lot of teams do, is start season 2 games on the road.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
That's tough, man. I think it is going to help this year because of the experience that they had. And so I think it's tough. I'd much rather play at least one game at home or a neutral site or something like that. But for this year and the way TD Houston fans are, I probably much rather than play on the road, because the fans are so fair weather. They rarely come. They come to see other teams. That's just a fact from since I've been in Houston since 2016. And so I like it. I think it's going to bring the best out of Houston to challenge them even more back against the wall. And I think I like it. I think them being on the road.
Right.
Yeah, and that was something that, honestly, it's kind of new, because I think last year Houston, I can't remember. I think they might have played the full month of September where they didn't have to leave Houston, because they played you guys at NRG, then they played Rice at Rice, and then they had Grambling for the opener. So, I mean, it's something new, and like Da'Yon said, I think it's something that really, with the team they have, they can kind of get away with it, because they are bringing back a veteran, experienced team where they're really motivated to get back to the American Athletic Conference Championship and did what they weren't able to do last season. So, but yeah, I can imagine if the roles were reversed and Houston was in a position kind of where you guys are with a new coach and kind of a new scheme trying to install new stuff, it would be brutal, absolutely. And kind of to add on to Da'Yon's point, say best case scenario for Houston, they come and they're 2-0 after those first 2 games. There's going to be a lot more buzz for week 3 when they're hosting. I know they're going to be hosting Kansas, but even then, that's going to be a Big 12 opponent you're going to see in the future, and there'll be a lot more excitement. And that I think it might end up working perfectly. Now it depends on what happens on Saturday in Texas Tech.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how y'all's scheduling changes now that you're part of the Big 12, because y'all have had to kind of get a big opponent on the schedule, not being a part of the Power 5. And like, if you want to make a run at one of those New Year's Six Bowls, like you kind of got to have one of those really good teams to start your season off with. So now that you're going to be in the Big 12 going into next year, where you already are guaranteed to play several really, really good teams, I'll be curious to see how y'all's scheduling changes down the road. And if y'all do kind of try to take, hey, let's start the season off with a lesser opponent and then get that hard game in or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, that's something that Kelvin Sampson on the men's basketball side has talked about, where, obviously, of course, when it comes to non-conference schedule in basketball, they're always trying to, if it's not scheduling tough opponents, it's being able to be in a multi-team event where you have those high-quality opponents. Right. Kelvin's talked about how once they join the Big 12, every conference game is going to be a Q1 game. So I'm sure it's going to be interesting to see how that transition is in football, and especially with football where they have to plan ahead so far ahead. So it'll certainly be interesting, but excitement at the same time. So I'll kind of leave you guys with this question. And we've kind of touched on it. Obviously, of course, we know that Houston's going to make the jump to the Big 12 next season. I would say probably in regards to opponents in the Big 12 that they're going to see, I would say that Houston and Texas Tech are probably the 2 schools that are much more familiar. So I'm curious, from a Texas Tech perspective, do you guys see Houston as a rival, or what is that dynamic like heading into this upcoming game?
I see it as a potential rival, but for me right now, it's like y'all got to beat us. Kind of to prove you're on that same level, because we haven't been a good football program over the last decade, and yet we've won 4 straight matchups against you guys. And so it's something that I definitely can see being a really fun Big 12 rivalry. Like, I kind of want a rivalry with all the Texas teams in the Big 12 with TCU, Baylor, you guys. And so I think there's definitely a lot of potential to it. I think we have the most familiarity with each other. And so I think that can be really good. But at the same time, like, I do think like y'all got to start beating us before it gets kind of on that level of a rivalry.
Yeah, I think it, even without the on the field action, it kind of already is. Like Da'Yon's already hyping it up, saying we're rivals. I think it's just the in-state thing, and a lot of familiar faces around with Dana Holgerson and transfers, and your basketball program being very good the last handful of years. And the other thing from the Texas Tech side, we get a lot of students and alumni from the Houston area, and so you'll get a lot of Houston games that you're going to have a lot of Texas Tech fans at. You can ask TCU about this problem, and because we do the same thing to them with an alumni base that's big in the Fort Worth area. And so you'll see that kind of start to filter in down there with those your home games, and it's going to kind of start maybe light a fire under your fan base a little bit. It's done it to TCU, I'll say that.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, to add on to the point, I think, Houston hasn't – TDCU Stadium holds about 40,000 people. I think they can extend it to hold more, but I think last time they sold over 30,000 people was 2018, so it's been a while. So, and a lot of it has to do just with where the program was 2019, 2020 with the COVID year. But yeah, that's certainly going to be a point of emphasis, especially this season. If they can't get that corrected, once they get into the Big 12 and they have to, it's been reported. There's a rumor out there. I guess it was confirmed by the UH athletic director Chris Pesman that the first Big 12 game that they're going to play is going to be hosted at TDCU Stadium. But like you guys mentioned, all the different Texas opponents from TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, if they don't get that corrected, it's going to be a lot of times where it might be 50-50 where, the other fans show up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just don't taunt us on Twitter or something and give us a reason to show up.
Right.
Yeah, or have the head coach accuse you guys of piping noise like Dana did for UTSA, because that certainly lit under fire under the UTSA fans. But that's gonna do it for today's episode. So Dustin, this is you guys' time for you guys to be able to plug. Where can people find you guys and check out your guys' work?
Take it away, Brooks.
Yeah, so we are at Tailgate_Talks on Twitter. If you want to follow us on social media, that's where we do the majority of our posting. Like I think most people do nowadays. It's the best platform for sports and everything. So you can follow us there. But if you want to follow the podcast, if you want to get familiar with the Tech fan base a little bit more, follow us. We're on Apple and Spotify. During the season, we're going to be posting recap episodes and then preview episodes each week. So we're going to kind of be getting 2 episodes out each week. But yeah, follow us on Apple, follow us on Spotify, Twitter. We're also on YouTube, where we'll post some short clips from each week's videos. We try not to post full episodes unless it's an interview, but 5-10 minute clips that people can catch if they don't have the full time to catch an hour-long episode or something like that. So we're also on YouTube at Tailgate Talks.
And you guys also did the cool series where you guys reached out to the new Big 12, schools and were able to get them on your podcast. That's how we were able to connect. So be sure to check them out.
Yeah, shout out that. We had a BYU, a Cincinnati, a UCF, and then, of course, we had you guys on to talk Houston. So all of those interviews are there, the full interview. So if you also want to get familiar, I know y'all are more familiar with some of those fan bases already, but if you want to hear some interviews with their podcast, those are also on YouTube.
For sure. And thank you guys again for your time, being able to hop on and talk Houston, Texas Tech, and then we'll see how Saturday goes. Yeah. I'm sure whoever wins will have bragging rights on Twitter, maybe down the road, whenever. We got to do this again, especially with the Big 12 in the future. So thanks again. Have a safe evening, night, 8 p.m. that we're recording this. So thank you guys.
Yeah, no problem. And we'll be at the game, so we'll be sure to post some photos and stuff like that and start some engagement on Twitter. But yeah thanks for having me.
For
Thank
sure.
you guys,
Sounds good.
All right.